I am so happy to have Michael Anthony with me today. Michael is an entrepreneur, author of the #1 best-selling book, Think Unbroken, speaker, and host of the Think Unbroken podcast. He has an amazing story. That's one of the reasons I sought him out to be on this podcast, because he is going to blow your mind from where he went to where he is now. It's pretty amazing, and the things that he does to help people. So, Michael, I gave you a little bit of introduction. Go ahead and expand on that, if you will.
Yeah, man. So today, like you said, author, speaker, coach, the list goes on and on and on, but that's not where I started. Like many people, I come from a very traumatic background. I had to figure out how to navigate the world on my own at a very young age, chased money, got super successful very young, subsequently destroyed my life, had to figure out how to turn that around. Blah, 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 leads me here to today where, we get to serve hundreds of thousands of people a month. We help transform trauma into triumph and help people learn to love themselves, man.
That's amazing. I always like to do this before we get deep into your story or into your expertise. I like to ask some fun getting to know you questions. So
cool.
What is your favorite podcast right now?
It will always be Impact Theory.
Okay, nice.
It's funny you asked me that, because today Tom Bilyeu was on my podcast and we just aired that this morning. But that show, it really was Inside Quest 7 years ago when I discovered Tom. Today, he's actually my mentor. I've got to spend a lot of time with him over the years, but that show, man, people who are in personal development, who are entrepreneurs, if you're not listening to that show, you're missing the boat, man.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Thanks for that, because I'm sure a lot of people will be checking that out now. Finish this sentence. In a perfect world.
In a perfect world, everyone would live life as who they truly are and not worry about what other people think about them.
Oh, nice. Best food as a leftover.
I actually hate leftovers too.
Okay. Nice.
But pizza's easy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember being in high school eating like leftover cold pizza all the time. So yeah.
Nice. All right. So now let's dive into your story. I want you to fill the audience in on kind of where you started and how you got to where you are now. I know it's probably a long story, so if you just want to kind of condense it, that's great too.
Yeah, man, I'll give you the elevator pitch version here. So, grew up in Indianapolis. Mother was a drug addict and alcoholic. In fact, when I was only 4 years old, she cut off my right index finger. And, hurt people. My stepdad's super abusive, beat the crap out of my brothers and I all the time, put me in the hospital. Imagine this, I'm 6'4", 220, I'm linebacker size. Imagine a guy my size beating up a 7-year-old, right? And so I spent the majority of my childhood homeless and deeply in poverty. In fact, lived with over 30 different families between 8 to 12. When my grandma adopted me when I was 12, you'd think that'd be a godsend, right? But I'm biracial, black and white, and she's an old racist ass white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of. So insert identity crisis, right? So 12 years old, I start getting high, popping pills, 13 drunk, 15, I'm expelled from school. As of today, I have no high school diploma, no college education, was trying to figure out how to navigate life in my teens, decided it was money, made the objective 100 grand a year by the time I was 21, because I've been in handcuffs more times than you can count. I got family in prison for life, and I knew I had to do it legally. Because as of today, man, my 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. And so I said 100 grand a year legally, no matter what, figure it out. Land a job with a Fortune 10 company at 20 years old, make $96,800, almost hit my goal. And between 20 to 26, I made $1 million. Wow. Now, the problem with that was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep, high from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to bed, cheating on my girlfriend. My brother literally says, never talk to me again. You're not my brother. And I was $50,000 in debt, right? And then I realized that everything that I'd created in my life was still only ever trying to do what other people said I would be. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not capable enough. Yeah, you can go get money, but you're not going to have good relationships. Yeah, you can go be great at all these other areas, but your friends are going to hate you and your family won't talk to you, right? And so I hit this rock bottom, basically look in the mirror, ask myself, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? The answer is no excuses, just results. And effectively what that means is I'm going to get out of my own damn way. I'm going to stop being a victim, and I'm literally going to do whatever it takes to be the hero of my own story. Fast forward 12 years from that moment, I spent almost $300,000 on my personal development and over 10,700 hours learning how to be me. And through that, we've been able to coach hundreds of thousands of people, have a top podcast, best-selling books, speaking on the biggest stages in the world. I love that this is an entrepreneur show because everyone probably knows Grant Cardone. He invested in Think Unbroken. I just want to lay that out. He believes in this mission so much. And so all that to be said, that's the story. That's what's led me to where I am today.
Wow. If I could touch on a part of that story where you went from the basically you were in a rough place, right? And then you got the $96,000 job, right? So can you talk about how that transition happened, how you went from that area from being kind of down
I got
to
you.
that job?
So here's the deal, man. At 18, I'm in this position where I don't graduate high school. Basically, they hand me the diploma. They say, we're done with you. Get out. My report card, I graduated with like a 1.1 GPA, right? Missed 100 days of school. It wasn't real, right? And so I get fired from this warehouse job where I'm literally putting microchips and motherboards all day long on an assembly line. Like, this is the place where like people's dreams go to die. And I'm watching the desperation in people's eyes, knowing for them, that was as good as it's going to get. For me, I knew there was something better in the future. And luckily I got fired from that job, right? Probably because I was stoned, right? But I was like, come on, man, there's a solution in here somewhere. And the thing that people have to understand, which I understood at 18 years old, which I still understand today, is that I felt like I could do anything. Right now, the problem is I didn't really have clarity about what anything meant. The only clarity I had was I'm going to make 100 grand a year. That was it. I didn't know clarity about my physical, mental, emotional health, my people, my community, nothing. I was like, I want money. Let's go and get money, because if I get money, then that means that A, I can prove myself right, that I'm capable of doing things. And then B, I can be like, screw you guys who didn't believe in me. I'm going to show you what I can do. And I did that. But the problem is it interrupted and destroyed and just, I mean, really, my life was crazy. Like, I've got stories we don't have time to get into.
Yeah.
And so what it came down to is effectively this, and this is the mistake people make. They're like, I have this idea, so I'm going to go towards it. Well, my idea in going towards it meant that there was over 18 months of getting told no by every single company I applied for. Hundreds of times. Right? You're not qualified. Oh, you weren't that good in the interview, blah, blah, blah. And then out of all those hundreds, man, it took one yes. And that one yes is a Fortune 10 company, right? Everybody knows who they are. And what happens is I come in, and initially I'm in an assistant role to like a sales manager person. And I get promoted within like 6 months. And right as I'm about to turn 21, dude, I made my first check for like $12,000, right? But it was all because I had massive clarity about what I wanted, and I wasn't willing to stop until I got it. Now, here's the problem, and this is the mistake most people make. They'll be like, I know what I want, and I'm not going to stop till I get it, but what are you willing to sacrifice to have it? And so I learned a lot of really terrible lessons in that time. And one of the things that was really great about that window also is I got into a leadership role really young. So at 18 and a half, after I got fired from that warehouse job, I'm working a fast food gig, doing $1 million a year in cheeseburgers and fries. And I got a team of 52 people under me as an assistant manager. And so I was learning skills, because skills have utility. And I'm like figuring out how to interview and do leadership and P&Ls and loss and shrink and hiring, firing, training, sales management, the whole nine. That 18 months had led me to that opportunity. And the only thing I knew, man, is like, I just wasn't going to quit.
Yeah. I think the really important lesson that I want to make sure everybody gets in there is, if you are dead set on getting a goal, you can get it if you are super focused. But once again, what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? Right. I think that's a huge lesson to think on that.
Yeah. And the mistake that people make in that is that they don't recognize that you can have anything that you want, right? But there's always an exchange for that, because, and Grant Cardone taught me this. He said, anything you want, you're going to have to give something up for it. Maybe you have to give up a behavior pattern or a partner or a relationship or a career that you've had because it no longer serves you. And if you don't have clarity, man, like if anything, I wish I could go back in time and someone be like, hey, dummy, life is about more than money. And Doug, you know this, everybody knows this. Until you actually make money, you don't realize that money doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Money is a vehicle, money is of service. I make great money today, but my life is amazing, dude. Like, I love my life. I would never change it for anything today. But when I was in my early 20s and I was seeking that money, which, and I had been an entrepreneur as a kid, right? Like, I was the kid who was like literally stealing candy from the Big Lots on the corner of 30th and Georgetown and going and selling it door to door because we were so poor, we couldn't pay our bills. So I needed every penny I could get, right? And I had clarity about that. And I knew that, like, when you're 8 years old, you don't know better necessarily. And so I'd always been sacrificing all these different aspects of my life and who I was for money. And then I realized, like, when you become of service, which is vastly more important, the thing that happens is you live in a state of fulfillment and money will come to you. I don't know when, but if you stay the course, money will come to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. We just had Dr. Obam Bowen. I don't know if we know who he is, but he was on the show and we were talking about success is not one dimensional. It's not the money in the bank account, right? True success has facets to it, right? So
yeah, totally.
Awesome. Now your podcast is called Think Unbroken, right?
Yes.
What does it mean to think unbroken?
Dude, the most simplified way of looking at it is taking all the experiences of your life, looking at it, saying, yes, I understand how I got to where I am, and not letting those experiences dictate what your future looks like. That's it in a nutshell, right? Because here's the reality, like, we're the sum total of all of our experiences leading up to this moment. And that effectively means everything that's ever happened to us impacts us. And for many of us, we stuff it down, we hide from it, we run from it, we want to pretend it doesn't impact us, but it actually does. And this is why our relationships aren't fruitful and why we can't make enough money and why when we want to speak on stages or do whatever that thing is, we find ourselves stuck because we're not living again in that space of being who we truly are. And to be unbroken isn't this idea of like, oh man, everything in my life is perfect. Because dude, some days my life sucks. Like, that's just the nature of life. But I'm always looking for I don't want to call it the silver lining, but I'm looking for the education in it, right? And being unbroken is about the willingness to look at what is, because that's the truth of the reality in the world, and not look at life as what you want it to be, because it's a very different thing. And if we can educate people, if we can teach people, if we can educate in a way that really creates a framework. I look at so much of what it is that I do in helping and coaching people as this continuum, right? Because it's like, I'm going to give you these tools. We're going to go through these programs. We're going to go through these courses, these events, these conferences. I'm going to teach you everything that I know, everything I'm continually learning. I'm going to give it all to you, but then you have to actually do it. And that's what Think Unbroken is. It's a very practicality-based show, experience, community, and company, because at the end of the day, dude, motivation is useless. Like, it really is. Because I can motivate everybody I know on planet Earth in the case that their house is on fire and their kids are inside. You're motivated, right? But what do you do after motivation? Well, and you hear everybody say this, so this isn't new, but it's about discipline. But the thing that's missing on the other side of discipline is most people don't know how to get to the space of self-accountability. And that's where we really come in, because what we help people understand is the reason why it makes sense for them to show up in their own life.
Yeah, I wanted to think about exactly how to phrase this question, but people that have come from a bad situation, right? Do you find that they often stay trapped in that identity and it's hard to break out, that's just their life given circumstances, right? And then it's hard to make the identity shift to being something else?
I mean, but isn't that true for everybody in all situations and all circumstances all the time? It's like, think about this, man. I've done leadership coaching for some pretty high-end executives in America, and like in a one-on-one setting. And these are people making $1 million+ a year, working for companies that we all hear of, and they're in a place of transition and they're terrified. right? And so it's not just what it is that's happened to us, it's where we're at today. And the only people that ever change are the people that are willing to change. That's it. I've had to, and this sucks. Like, I hate when this happens, but sometimes it does. I've had to kick people out of the program. Like, you actually don't want to change. You're doing this so you can say it didn't work. Right. And so the people who are willing to have their life be different and transformed, their life will be different and transformed because they're going to show up and they're going to do the work. Right. And so it's like, I can give you have Expert Secrets behind you, right? Or is it Traffic Secrets, whichever book that is, right? Expert Secrets. Yep. Incredible book, right? Russell Brunson is somebody who's played a huge role in my life. That book literally has everything you need in it to become a millionaire.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it? Because there's people who are going to read that book, right? And I love Shoe Dog, Phil Knight. That's a phenomenal book as well. People are going to read those books and they're going, oh, this isn't for me. You already decided. The moment you make a decision, it is decided. The only difference, here's what I think about every single day, man. The only difference between success and failure in my life and in the people that I work with is that they have a timeline. Now, there are people who are going to be willing to move towards that idea of the person that they could be by not quitting, by not giving up, because it might take you 15 years to become that person. Like, I'm 13 years into my journey, and I promise you, I'm still figuring it out. Right. And then there are the people who go, it's been a week, I quit.
Yeah.
Can't help those people.
Yeah.
Yes. There's nothing I can ever do to help those people. And so when you predetermine and pre-qualify success in your life based on what it is that you are not willing to do and how you are not willing to show up, you already determine. It's already there for you. And so I always tell people, be mindful of the words that you're using, because I think about the career I'm building and the lifestyle that I want and the impact that I want to have on the world. And it's like, I'm not there yet. Right. But yet is the most empirical word, because it's like, yeah, on a long enough timeline, and this is definitely a Tom Bilyeu thing, because this thing changed my life forever. Like, on a long enough timeline, you can be anything that you want to be. And I've just seen that play out in my life again and again and again. I didn't have those words when I was younger, right? Making $100,000 a year in my 20s was just like, I just had to get there, right? Being 350 pounds and be like, I need to change my physical body. It took me like 7 years. I was like, I just got to get there, right? Building huge conferences, events. We have Unbroken Con coming up around the corner. We've got thousands of people registered. My first event, 2 people came, bro. Right. And so that's the game. I know this is a long-winded answer to your question, but that's the reality. The only time anyone's life changes is when they make the decisions to change, and then they take action for an unknown, determined period of time.
Yeah. How often is it that entrepreneurs quit at that moment when they try something and they don't get the desired result that they were looking for, and then they think that it's just not possible for them, right? It's you got to stick with it.
Yeah, you can't be an entrepreneur if that's how you're going to think about it.
Right.
Right. Because it's iterative. Right. And every single day, man, it's wild to me, because I'll run ads and I'll do, different things in social posting. I'll hit the newsletter. I'll hit our text list. We got a ton of people in our community. I don't ever know what's going to work. And sometimes I'm like, man, I know this is going to work. This is the best piece of copy I've ever read. I just read Dan Kennedy's book and Hormozi's books, and I've read all these guys' books. I know exactly what to do. And then nothing. And then I'll just be like, oh, I'm going to try this other thing. Boom. And it'll explode. Right. But then that'll stop working. And then you got to do it again. And that's the game of entrepreneurship, right? This is not my first business. This is my most successful business. But the other 6 before now, they're not here anymore, right? And that's because I didn't understand that entrepreneurship is very simple. It's like, who's willing to suffer the most?
Yep. Yeah, it's very often. What are you willing to sacrifice? Who's willing to sacrifice, right? Because you can't be comfortable as an entrepreneur. You're always growing. If you're a good entrepreneur, you're always growing. So you're always uncomfortable.
Yeah. And in that discomfort too, you figure out who you are. And I'll tell you this, the most successful entrepreneurs that I know, they all know exactly who they are. I could be like, tell me who Gary Vee is. And you'll be like, he's this guy. Like, tell me who Tim Story is. You'll be like, this guy. Right. And that's how it is. And so when you can get into that place of living into who you really are, your entrepreneur journey is going to be vastly more successful, because if you're just bullshitting people all the time, they know we ain't dumb. Like I
Yeah.
know when somebody's lying to me, right? It's a trait we all carry for survival. And so if you can be, people always say the damn word authentic, but I'm going to say it because it matters.
Yeah.
Like authenticity is showing up and living life as who you are without making excuses for who it is that you are. You don't know anybody anything. You don't need to apologize who you are. And if you can bring that into entrepreneurship with having the willingness to be patient and also have the willingness to recognize like you're going to fail way more than you're going to succeed, man, on a long enough timeline, you're going to win.
Yeah. That's powerful. Thank you for that. Let's dive into the childhood trauma thing. Like for entrepreneurs that have dealt with childhood trauma, do you think there's a secret to breaking through that?
Yeah, man. Look, here's what it comes down to. Most people who come from backgrounds like mine are more afraid of success than they are of failure. Because here's why. Think about how many times you're told you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you're not capable enough, you don't matter, you're dumb. This is why your family's poor. This, that, right? All these stories we get told as kids. Entrepreneurship is the ultimate battle of self. Like I'm an author first, right? I will always be a writer first. It's just how I've always been. I wrote my first book when I was like 8 years old, right? And so whatever that is when you're a child. And here's the truth about it. When you're willing to look at who you are and understand that your past is playing a role in what you are doing today, that is keeping you from, dude, it's keeping you from making the post, from getting on the video, from speaking on the stage, from offering the product at the price that is correct. Man, I was at an event recently and I bumped into this woman who had a beautiful, amazing product, and she had it commodity priced with luxury packaging. And I was like, are you high right now? What are you doing? And she was like, I'm scared to charge that much. I go, well, you better get over that fear or your business is going to fail. Right. And so it's like, you also have to realize that there are value ladders in this. So do you have your free offer, your $4, your $12, your $97, your $297, your $997, right? The list goes on and on and on. You always want that, but you can't make that offer if you don't believe in yourself because you've been stuffed down since you were 4 years old. And so you've got to be willing to face the mirror. You've got to be willing to face that part of you that is not even like, it's not even your fault, man. This is what's crazy about it. Like, it's not your fault that you don't know how to stand up for yourself. It's not your fault that you don't know how to ask for what you want. The number one thing that I believe, and look, I've spoken with the greatest minds in trauma on planet freaking Earth. Dr. Caroline Leaf, Judd Brewer, Anna Lamke. I mean, we have Dr. Gabor Mate who's speaking on Unbroken Con. I've talked with all of them, dude, and they all agree with what I'm about to say. Trauma and abuse is not the pain. It's not this finger that was cut off. It's not the whatever that thing was. It's the ongoing effect and impact of this singular experience. And so when you recognize that and you go, man, why can't I ever get on these sales calls? Why can't I ever send this email? Why can't I ever get on this podcast? Well, it's because you're terrified, because those experiences of the past are the theft of your identity. It literally strips who you are, and you become who you need to be for survival. And so if you've only ever needed to be a quiet, downtrodden, hidden, back of the classroom kid so that you're safe, man, how are you going to put yourself on social media and talk about the offer that can change somebody's life? You're not. And so that's the impact that trauma has on entrepreneurship. Like, I mean, I can go massively deeper into it, but from high level, and the framework of it is people who want to be successful have to be willing to face their past. Because it's nothing about my career changed until I was on stages, until I was on massive podcasts, until I was putting ads out with my face all over them all the time, right? Because before it's crazy, almost 7 years ago, I was blogging anonymously. That's it. Cannot make money anonymously, dude. We live in a very different world, right? And so ultimately what it comes down to is you have to educate yourself. You have to understand what I call the framework of healing, which is causation and correlation. Can you look, life is linear. Your start date, your end date, it's on a path, right? Everything else in there is chaos. I don't even know what's happening, right? But you can trace back and you can map this and you can go, oh, when I was in 3rd grade, that thing happened that made me shut down, that then became a survival mechanism that my body and my mind adapted to so that I could make it to the point I could be out on my own. And that served me for a period of time. But now that experience and that mechanism no longer serve me. So I have to reframe the understanding and beliefs that I have about who I'm capable of being. But here's the crazy ass part about this stuff. The only way you can become you is by becoming you.
Okay. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more?
Every single moment of every single day, you have decisions to make about who you are, your truth, about how you want to show up in the world. And in those moments, we are basing them on a lot of different factors, right? One, you have the part about our DNA and our genetics that say, hey, we live in a world in which you get ostracized from the community. You're very likely not going to survive. That's inherently baked into all of us. Like, you can't argue that, right? But we don't live in that world or that society anymore. So being ostracized probably isn't going to kill you. So why are you doing things for other people so that they like you, instead of living into who you truly are? And in that, in the day-to-day moments, but also in the long-term visions and goals, like, are you showing up and living life as the person that you choose to be? And the only way that you can be the person that you want to be is by actually being the person that you want to be. And so if you're always only doing what everyone else wants of you, then you're never living into who you truly are. And most people are doing things or not doing things to satiate the needs of people in their life, their family, their mother, their coworkers, their partner. They're like, oh, I'm going to make myself small. I remember one time I was dating this girl and she's like, you curse too much. You shouldn't cuss. And I was like, that's who I am. I'm not going to not be me so that you feel better about who I am. And that's what most people do. They pretend to be somebody else for them. And when you turn that off and you recognize that operating in a space, and it's not about being crass or being an asshole. It's not about trying to put people down or be better than them. It's about being exactly who you choose to be. And you can only do that by showing up as who that person is every single day. Because the more you pretend to be somebody else, the harder this journey is going to be for you. And people, and the fear is, well, people aren't going to like me. So what does that have to do with anything? People are going to think bad things about me. Dude, nobody's thinking about you anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, can you just show up? Can you be willing to face the fear that you have within you about who you are, in spite or even despite of what other people think about you? That's the game.
Yeah. What also I get from that is you serve the people you're supposed to serve better when you show up as you're supposed to show up, right? If you're
100%.
if you're not yourself, then you're not serving them the way that you were meant to serve them.
Yeah. And they're also not going to connect with you, and you're going to be in trouble. Like, especially if you are in a service-based industry, right? It's one thing if you make widgets and you are great at marketing. That doesn't really matter, right? It's a different world, right? But if you're in service-based where people are connecting with you because of your story, your journey, your mission, what it is that the problem you can solve for them, and you haven't solved that problem for yourself, have fun being broke.
Yeah. Yep. I have another question that I saw on your socials, or on your website recently, about the effects that trauma has, not just mentally, but physically. Can you talk about the effects of trauma has on you physically?
Yeah, man. Look, again, that comes back to that causation and correlation thing. So if you go look at the ACE survey, Adverse Childhood Experiences survey, what they found was that there's a direct correlation between long-term detrimental health ramifications and the experiences that you do have in childhood trauma. And they found that, there's a series of questions that they put people through to determine the number of questions that they would answer yes to. It's a series of 10 questions, right? So it's questions like, did you ever feel like you were not taken care of? Did a family member ever commit suicide? Did a family member go to prison? Did your parents get divorced? Were you hurt physically, mentally, emotionally, right? And there's this list of these questions. So chances are you probably have one, especially in America when you have a divorce rate of like 60% now. Chances are you probably have one. Well, here's what's fascinating. If you answer yes to one of those questions, you may answer yes to two or more. And there's an 83% likelihood that you answer yes to two or more of those questions, right? And so as you look at the the correlation between the number of those questions you answer yes and your health, what you find is this really interesting overlap. Now, so what happened initially in this study is Dr. Folletti and California Center for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente, what happened initially, he was trying to help people lose weight. And then he came across this woman who had this weird experience at work. She had lost like 50 pounds, and suddenly within a month, she had ballooned all the way back up. Right. And he realized, because she said something that triggered a thought for him, he said, oh, wait a second, there's something in your trauma in your childhood that has made you want to move towards food as a protective mechanism. Because if you're big, then you're safe. Right. If you're overweight, then you're safe. That was kind of my experience too, being 350 pounds. And so as you got deeper into the research and the study, what you start to notice is where you fall in terms of answering yes to these series of questions. Again, this is called the ACE survey. I highly recommend everybody watching this or listening goes and does this research for themselves, because it changed my life. But what happens, depending on where you fall, you could be up to 2,200% more likely to be an alcoholic, 2,000% more likely to use cigarettes and tobacco, 5,000% more likely to be depressed and have anxiety,
Wow.
and 5,200% more likely to commit suicide than someone who did not have answers to 4 more of those questions. And so when you look at that, and of course that's versus people who answered no to all of those questions. That's how you get numbers that are so exacerbated. But, I had answered yes to 10, and there's 10 questions.
Wow.
350. Smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep, suicidal, depressed. It all added up, man. I go look at my life at 26 years old. I was like, oh, now I can understand how I got here. And so when I came across this research when I was 29, almost a decade ago now, it changed my life forever, because I actually understood the behavior patterns. I understood why I was doing what I was doing. It wasn't only just this thing about our impulses, right? It wasn't just like, oh, I'm having a moment, so I'm going to do. It was like baked into me. Because what happens is when you move towards food, alcohol, sex, like whatever those things are, those coping mechanisms, the reason why we move to them aggressively, and for some people, and especially in this space, entrepreneurship, it's workaholism. And workaholism to me is not working hard because you want to create something. It's abandoning everything else that matters because you're chasing success, right? Did that too. Well, guess what? The reason why we move to those coping mechanisms is because it makes us feel safe in our own body. Even though, and this is where it's real fucked up, dude, even though it makes us feel safe in our own body, it's actually us really doing the same things that happened to us as a kid, because we believe that to be what we are.
Is that ACE survey, is that available online? Do you know?
It's everywhere. It's on I've done it on my podcast. It's in my book. It's on our website. It's everywhere. If you go to thinkunbroken.com and you type in ACE, it'll show up.
Awesome. Awesome. So now let's talk about your coaching, exactly how you help people and what you have to offer so that they can find out more about you.
Yeah, man, we have tons of curriculum. We have tons of, dude, I probably got 2,500 hours of content for free on the internet. Like, it's there,
Wow.
right? You don't even have to go to the next level, but you know this as well as I do. Those who pay attention. And so we do have coaching programs. We have our value ladder. See, I love that I can use this language in an entrepreneur conversation, because I don't have to explain it. We have $9 offers and $20 offers and a $97 a month group coaching program. One-on-one with me is multiple 5 figures, but we have events, we have conferences, we have, courses you can take. It's all there. Like, we do everything. And it's really about different scopes and depths and topics. I mean, right now we have 4 different courses that are online, and then we have our conference coming up here shortly. But ultimately, I mean, there's so much here. One of the things that we're working on for next year is very much in the vein of this conversation. It's a course on trauma and leadership, right? And how to be an effective leader, knowing that, you scream at your employees. It's like, all right, why are you screaming at your employees, Doug? What do we got to figure out here, buddy? Yeah. And so we have tons of stuff, man. And ultimately, I always tell people, start where you're at, because for me, and I rewind in this journey, it was, man, I'm going to the library. I'm reading books. I'm watching videos on the internet. Podcasts weren't really a thing yet, but they were, whatever you could find. And I never spent any money. And then it was $50 with Brendan Burchard. And then it was now like 50 grand with Grant, so that's the game, man. Start where you are and don't worry about it. Just start where you are.
Awesome. Awesome. So would they just go to find out more about you, just go to Think Unbroken website, thinkunbroken.com?
Yeah, you can go to thinkunbroken.com, or you check me out on social at Michael Unbroken. And of course the Think Unbroken podcast. Nice.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael. It has been a pleasure having you on the show. Do you have any parting words for our entrepreneurs?
Yeah, man. Here's what I think about. Community is everything in this game. And the more that you show up for people, the more that they're going to show up for you. And people, if you can understand what it means for you, it's different for everybody. But if you can understand what it means for you to be of service to people, it'll change your life forever, right? I could have said no to this conversation with you very easily, man. I'm so freaking busy. It's not even funny. I run 3 companies. I got a conference with thousands of people coming, but I'm like, how can I serve this group of people that I am part of? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner, right? And so find out how you can serve, even if you have to stretch yourself a little thin. Know your breaking points. Let's be very clear about that. Know your breaking points, but stretch yourself a little bit to be of value to people, because I'm telling you, one day somebody's going to pick up the phone and they're going to be like, dude, I saw that thing you did for that person. I have an opportunity for you that's going to change your life. And it has happened to me time and time and time again, dude.
Yep. Totally appreciate that. Thank you again, Michael. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I'm sure that I've gotten some value out of it, and I'm sure the audience has too. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And until next time, entrepreneurs, keep moving forward.